What if I told you that a single snap decision about the price of a fancy latte could someday snowball into life-changing or life-altering money? Now, what if that decision hinged on collecting just 1,000 of something that most people still think is pure sci-fi? So picture this. It's 6 a.m, sun barely yawning over the skyline, and I'm sitting in my usual corner booth nursing a double espresso that costs, coincidentally, almost exactly 1 XRP. Now, a news alert kind of buzzes my phone. Expert says owning 1,000 XRP is non-negotiable if you're serious about your finances. So non-negotiable. Now that word kind of hits like an air horn in a silent library then, because before I even kind of could finish sip number 2, I feel my inner detective kind of jump up, trench coat on and magnifying glass in hand, ready to hunt for the clues. Now, hold up. I need to drop the ground rules because, well, lawyers exist. And this might just shock you, but I am not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. Your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Right, that's your disclaimer done. Let's buckle in. Let's get back to the espresso bar, right? Steam kind of hissing, beans are grinding, and a kind of soundtrack for crypto FOMO then, right? The headline comes from, guess who, Adriano Farina, the founder of Alpha Lions Academy, and a guy who basically moonwalks through crypto Twitter yelling 1,000 XRP or bust. At least according to him, if you're not stacking at least a grand's worth of these digital raindrops, then you're actually playing, financial Jenga with half the blocks missing. It's a pretty bold claim, right? So it's kind of like someone telling you that oxygen is optional. Naturally, I had to kind of peel back the layers. The first layer is the digital euro. Now, Christine Lagarde, the European Central Bank's kind of front woman, or you can probably comment down below with your thoughts about Christine. Anyway, she has kind of circled October 2025 in bright red kind of Sharpie for the official kind of rollout. Now she calls it the currency of the future, which feels equal parts inspiring and ominous, right? Because just like a sci-fi movie trailer, we all know how CBDCs potentially have the ability to be used for evil, and if Christine is as evil as I believe she is, this isn't going to end well. Let's think Terminator. But anyway, all European institutions are supposedly syncing their calendars, right? Picture a continent of bureaucrats kind of hitting the same update button in perfect unison. It's rare, but apparently it's happening. And if it does, well, apparently there's certain cash rules that are going to be enforced, such as you're not really allowed to use cash in Europe. Now, here's where it kind of gets a bit crunchy, right? Farina's claims that the TPIS network, that's Target Instant Payment Settlement, TIPS, the plumbing behind Europe's kind of real-time payments may already be flirting with the XRP Ledger at the code level. Now, he tosses out a few breadcrumbs about non-disclosure agreements, test environments, and friendly neighborhood central banks poking the XRPL like kids tapping into a kind of fishbowl. Nothing publicly confirmed, of course, but the whispers, they're quite loud. Now, while that sizzles, we slide into layer 2, Ripple's ecosystem kind of tentacles. Now, France's central bank reportedly ran a pilot test on the XRPL. Now, the digital currency, pegged to the euro, proudly rides the same rails. And then there's kind of the spicy rumor that Ripple could scoop up Circle, the brains behind USDC, which just happens to be one of the only stablecoins already kind of playing nice with Europe's brand new MiCA regulations. And it just so happens that USDC just actually entered the XRPL. So imagine letting Ripple control a stablecoin that's pre-owned, at least pre-approved, I should say, by the EU sandbox. Talk about being the kid who brings the only football to recess. And if you want a recent parallel, well, Farina kind of points to Stella's fireworks show, right? Remember Ukraine's CBDC announcement? Well, Stella's XLM rocketed over 200% in the following weeks, probably making some early holders spit out their coffee. Now, Farina's thesis here is that if XRP becomes the rails of the digital euro, well, we might see a replay, only louder, faster, and with a European techno beat. So let's sprinkle in some numbers to see why 1000 XRP sounds both doable and oddly epic. So at today's kind of sticker of roughly $2.18 at the point of recording per coin, it's also important to note that I'm pre-recording this video because I'm over in New York for an event, then you're actually probably going to be looking at $2,180 to kind of cross the 1,000 token finish line. Now that's less than a 3-year gym membership that you never actually use, or that slightly terrifying impulsive buy, drip coffee reboot gathering dust in the kitchen. And yet, according to Farina, that tiny stack could be your admission ticket to what he calls multi-decade millionaire territory. Should XRP ever moonshot to $100, $500, or the mythical $1,000 mark? Okay, let's pump the brakes because the crypto road is littered with shells of guaranteed moons, while the rest are kind of all heard the tales before, right? Coins hyped as the next digital gold, only to nosedive harder than my attempt at homemade sourdough. Still, the pattern is hard to ignore, right? The moment that central banks say, hey, we might use this blockchain thing, markets will scramble like seagulls spotting fries. And so here I am, still in the cafe, mental kind of gears whirling away. A couple at the next table are debating whether their dog needs its own Instagram account. Meanwhile, of course, I'm sketching out what a post-October 2025 world might actually look like. Digital Euros app on your phone, a limited amount of cash that you're legally allowed to spend, a push notification maybe, payment settled via XRPL in 1.7 seconds, and grandma in Berlin zaps pocket money to her grandkids in Barcelona with 0 fees. And neither of them know or even care that XRP is under the hood. Is that the dream scenario? The question, I guess, does owning 1000 XRP put you in the front row seats when that curtain lifts? So let's do some challenges, or talk challenges, I guess, because every hero's journey needs a dragon, right? And challenge number 1 is going to be the regulation kind of whiplash. Now, the EU loves rules the way that cats love knocking things off of tables, right? Passionately and without any apology, such as the limit on the amount of cash that you'd legally be able to spend. Everything would be tracked through the CBDC, and Micro, of course, is detailed enough to qualify as an evening reading material if you're having trouble sleeping, right? Challenge number 2 is going to be competition. Stellar, Algorand, and a dozen other projects all want their blockchain banner hanging on Europe's kind of, I guess, palace gates. Challenge number 3, timing. Announcements love markets fast, right? Or at least move markets fast anyway. And if NDAs kind of keep the XRPL news hush-hush until go time, well, retail investors might blink and see the price chat, completely evaporate, or, already halfway up Everest. And that's kind of Farina's train is leaving the station mantra. But there is a potential flip side then, right? Being early kind of stinks kind of sometimes. You endure the, are you still into that crypto thing, right? Elbow kind of lifts, at the kind of family dinner, if you will. And you hold enough dips, to kind of look suspiciously like cliff dives. Now, you kind of refresh the chart at 1 a.m. because sleep is for people without limit orders, right? And if, in other words, the problem isn't just buying 1000 XRP, it's holding it with ironclad grip when the market tests your resolve like an overly enthusiastic gym coach. But here is a pit stop for a shout out, right? If you crave a team of like-minded night owls, charts kind of stalkers, then join our free educational Discord server that is linked in the description. You can hop drop-in, share memes, dissect charts, and yes, you can ask me why my caffeine intake should be illegal. All right, let's crank this microscope into another notch then, right? Suppose Ripple does snatch up Circle, right? It's a big if. Now that would kind of merge USDC's regulatory hall pass with Ripple's payment highways. Suddenly you've got a stablecoin liquidity glued directly to on-chain liquidity corridors and banks that already trust it. It's kind of like the moment that peanut butter and jelly met, right? Simple combo, yet unstoppable. So skeptics, of course, will point out that we haven't even seen any kind of term sheets. But in finance, big deals often surface only after every signature is actually bone dry. So remember when PayPal quietly kind of nabbed Curve and everyone kind of went, wait, what? The morning after. It's the same kind of vibe here. Here's a stat corner though, right? Europe's kind of instant payments volume is projected to breach 2 trillion euros annually by 2027. Even if XRP snags a conservative 5% of that, we're talking about 100 billion euros channeled through the ledger where each transaction kisses XRP for liquidity. Its minuscule fees times billions of euros equals sturdy demand. So maths so simple that it could kind of star in its own kid's cartoon. Now, here's a quick anecdote, right? A buddy of mine, let's call him Ravi, sold his entire XRP bag in late 2023 because he got tired of waiting for the SEC lawsuit resolution, I should say. Now, he kind of bought a gaming PC instead. By mid-2024, XRP had doubled. The PC had kind of depreciated faster than a melting snowman, and Ravi's kind of new mantra, patience has an ROI, though he usually mutters it while installing yet another 100 gigabit update. Now, point is here that timeline kind of impatience is a real portfolio killer. Okay, a lot of people are going to ask, okay, but how high can XRP actually go? And that question reminds me of asking how many kind of licks to the center of a lollipop. And it depends on technique, humidity, and of course, whether you get bored halfway through, right? And Farina kind of tosses out $100 to $1,000 long-term targets. Now, could they happen? Could also, you know, take until my hairline submits to kind of physics, right? But here is the kicker. You don't necessarily need an Everest level peak to make 1000 XRP meaningful. So even a climb to $20 rockets your $2,180 kind of stake to 20 grand. So that won't buy you a yacht, but it might, you know, mean a debt-free living or at least an upgrade from that kind of suspiciously squeaky kind of hatchback. And let's connect some kind of geopolitical dots as well, right? Central banks are racing to digitize, you know, because cash is a logistical nightmare and cross-border payments move slower than my old dial-up modem, which, yes, I'm old enough to remember. Now, the ECB wants to greenlight, I should say they want lightning fast euro transfers, but they also want control, right? Then that's quite clear. By making it essentially illegal to spend a certain amount of cash and forcing people to spend digital, you know, it basically gives them control. And the European Union and the ECB, let's face it, they have a bit of a history as being unelected bureaucrats who are dictating to the citizens. And if they choose that you cannot spend in certain places, well, that could be programmed, and that is a problem. So I'm not necessarily all for this, but it is happening and we can't ignore it. Now, Ripple's kind of specializing in lightning fast anything kind of transfers, right? And so they're actually kind of the peanut butter and jelly again, right? And yet the final confirmation here, the ink on the dotted electronic line, it is not public. So we're stuck kind of interpreting, you know, shadows on a wall, like Plato's kind of cave, albeit with more hashtags. And speaking of hashtags, every time that Farina tweets, you know, hashtag XRP the standard, Twitter erupts into debates that makes kind of pro versus anti-pineapple pizza arguments look tame. Bulls argue XRPL's energy efficient, baked in decentralized exchange and 12 plus year uptime. And bears, of course, snark at the kind of bag holder cope, right? And, you know, in the kind of middle, silent accumulators just sip coffee, right? They set their limit orders and they quietly just pass the popcorn. But let's kind of pivot to the mindset then, because buying is pretty easy. Conviction is hard, right? Imagine that you've got your 1000 XRP. Now what do? You wake up, you refresh CoinMarketCap, and you see a 15% drop, and your inner toddler screams sell. Now that's kind of where having a plan kind of beats having diamond-plated emojis in your Twitter bio, right? So let's decide your kind of exit points before the roller coaster really starts. And you wouldn't kind of board a roller coaster if someone whispered, "We'll figure out the brakes later," right? It's the same principle. Now, all the while, institutional players, they are lurking in the background, ready to kind of gobble up liquidity the moment that regulators and regulations kind of clear the fog. So when that happens, the average retail Joe might stare at a $10 to $20 XRP saying, "Shh, I wish I had, bought that sooner." And little do they know, the Whisper network's been kind of buzzing for years. And it's kind of like discovering your favorite indie band the day after they actually headline Glastonbury. And speaking of discovery, Blowfin's crypto exchange is where I parked some of my Satoshis last month and tested their XRP order book. It's a smooth interface, there's zero drama withdrawals, and for full disclosure, the link in the description is an affiliate link. That kind of directly supports the channel here. So if you sign up through it, you're tossing me some digital high fives at no extra cost to yourself. But remember the disclaimer, still no financial advice and everything is your call. Okay, let's circle back to Farina, Mr. Alpha Lions himself. Now he frames, ignoring kind of XRP as the defining of insanity, right? Now these are pretty strong words, and maybe he's biased after all, right? Champions for the cause rarely kind of sprinkle their own speeches with, but hey, I could be wrong. Yet there's kind of wisdom in the kind of passionate voices too, right? They kind of force you to question your own kind of inner voice. And when someone kind of pounds the table hard enough, you either join the rhythm or you're going to walk away from it. Now, you can't pretend that you didn't hear it. Now, you can cue the climax here, right? October 2025. Imagine streaming the ECB's live press conference, right? Christine Lagarde steps up, serves up as always, and subtly kind of reads, digital euro transactions will leverage Ripple's XRP Ledger for instant cross-border settlement. Now the camera, of course, would zoom in on her satisfied smile as the headline ticker goes berserk. Now your phone, of course, it's going to light up like Times Square, right? Exchanges will freeze under the load. It's always good to have multiple exchanges. If you haven't done so already, I would recommend jumping into the description, going to all of the different exchanges that are there and having an account for each of them. Even if you don't use them, it's better to have access to these things. Anyway, Twitter is going to be one giant caps lock, if you will. And on that day, and if that day in fact arrives, you're going to be holding a slice of that pie. Congratulations, right? You boarded before the crowd did. Now, if it doesn't happen, which is possible, right, you probably still learned heaps about macro finance, cryptography, and your own risk tolerance. So knowledge that beats scrolling cat videos. Now, because at this point, and this part really does matter, investing isn't binary, right? You win or you get wrecked, right? It's actually kind of proportionate, right? It's all strategy, and it's accepting that some seeds sprout and others just turn into bird feed, right? Owning 1000 XRP, shouldn't be a lottery ticket, right? It should be about whether this altcoin fits your bigger kind of blueprint. It's not about rent money and and whether you can kind of stomach volatility, right? It's actually about whether you're going to lose sleep. Maybe if you do, and you do lose sleep over an investment, then it's probably time to trim the size or maybe even skip it altogether, right? There's zero shame in doing either of these options. And for me, of course, I'm not quite at Farina's insanity threshold, but the idea of locking away 1000 XRP in cold storage, has officially kind of graduated from someday to kind of calendar reminder. Maybe I'll even throw in a little celebratory kind of balloons, cupcakes, and a label that says 1K Club, right? My friends will, of course, roll their eyes. I'll kind of snap a picture for prosperity, and future me will either frame it under kind of smart choice or learning experience. And life's funnier when you kind of embrace both outcomes. All right, let's go ahead and land the plane, because takeaway number one here is that the digital euro train has a departure date, October 2025, and XRP's ticket window might be somewhere on the platform. Now, the takeaway number two is that 1000 XRP costs less than a mid-range laptop, but could morph into something life-changing, if and only if kind of speculative dominoes tumble the right way. Takeaway number three, research beats rumors, right? Remember the ECB papers, the skim MiCA regulations, and join communities, hello free Discord, where critical minds slice through the hype with kind of, Occam's razor.